Imagine a world where smoke saved lives and invented flavor in equal measure. Before refrigeration, smoke acted like medicine, record, and currency across human communities. This story follows embers that kept food edible and taught people to love new tastes for millennia. We will trace the earliest meat smoking methods across continents and deep time with curiosity. We will also explain the chemistry that preserves meat and the processes that create those unforgettable flavors. Listening closely will reveal how culture, necessity, and invention braided together around a fire. The earliest meat smoking methods probably began as accidents near cooking fires. Slow drips of fat onto smoldering coals produced persistent smoke and a discovery of preservation properties. Those early observations turned into deliberate practice as people hung meat above long, burning embers to dry and flavor food. Shelters, lean-tos, and simple wooden racks became primitive smokehouses because people needed meat to last. Smoking offered a predictable way to extend food through seasons and migrations. What started as improvisation became a technology passed from elder to apprentice. Smoke preserves meat through a convergence of physical and chemical effects working in concert. First, heat and smoke dry the surface, removing moisture and slowing bacterial growth on the meat. Second, compounds in smoke like phenols, acids, and formaldehyde create an antimicrobial and antioxidant barrier that protects the flesh over time. This preservation is not magic, but layered science that happens slowly and deliberately over hours and days. Different temperatures and wood types influence how deeply smoke penetrates muscle and fat. Mastery of those variables was the difference between survival and spoiled food for early societies. Early humans noticed certain woods changed flavor and preservation in predictable ways over time. Hardwoods like oak and hickory burned hot and produced long-lasting aromatic smoke favored for preservation and taste. Softer woods and resinous woods were often avoided because they created bitter or toxic smoke compounds that ruin meat. These choices were empirical lessons learned by taste, trial, and error across generations. Wood selection became a local knowledge system tied to forests, seasons, and rituals. That knowledge later evolved into regional traditions and culinary identities anchored around particular trees. Across the northern seas, cold smoking developed as a preservation technique for oily fish and delicate meats. Cold smoke uses smoke at low temperatures over long periods to dry and aromatize without cooking flesh. Communities living on coasts adapted smokehouses that kept ambient temperatures low while channeling smoke through drying chambers. Cold smoking allowed fish like salmon and herring to travel farther and feed populations during lean months. That practice created staples such as lox and kippers that became foundation foods of trade and culture. The subtle aroma of cold-smoked fish carries centuries of logistics and survival in every bite. Indigenous peoples in the Americas developed smoking techniques that were adapted to available wood and climate. Thinly sliced meat was dried into jerky over open smoke, creating highly portable and energy-dense rations for travel. Some tribes combined drying and smoking with rendered fat and berries to produce pemmican, a preserved superfood for winter and war. Those techniques were sophisticated, optimized, and often encoded into ritual and seasonal calendars. Smoking was not purely survival work, but a social practice shared around communal fires. The transmission of these methods helped shape trade networks and cultural resilience across vast landscapes. In East Asia, smoking became layered with fermentation and drying to create complex preserved foods. Japan's katsuobushi is a striking example where fish is smoked, sun-dried, and then fermented to create intense umami depth. That method transformed simple skipjack tuna into a culinary cornerstone used to flavor broths and shape cuisine for centuries. China and Korea developed their own hybrids of curing, smoking, and aging to serve varied climates and tastes. In many regions, smoking was integrated into salt curing and spice blends to create distinct regional profiles. Those local permutations show how smoking techniques evolved in dialogue with other preservation technologies. Across Africa, smoking adapted to preserve fish and game in hot climates. Where sun drying alone was risky, smoke provided a degree of microbial control that sun and wind could not consistently deliver. African smokehouses often used smoky smoke fires combined with smoke, rich curing to preserve protein for markets and household needs. South Africa's biltong tradition blends curing and air drying and sometimes smoking to produce intensely flavored preserved meat. Spices, vinegar, and smoke converge to create portable stable meat that fed workers and traders. Those recipes traveled with people and adapted to new environments, becoming touchstones of regional cuisine. In Northern Europe, smoking was as much about climate as it was culture and architecture. Long winters required reliable preservation, so smokehouses became built into domestic and communal life. In Scandinavia and the Baltics, people smoked everything from reindeer to herring to ensure calories lasted through frozen months. Smoking methods there emphasized cold smoke and slow drying that preserved texture and nutrient value. Flavor profiles were restrained and focused on salt balance and gentle wood aromas. Those restrained flavors now command interest among chefs seeking subtlety rather than bombastic smoke. Medieval Europe institutionalized smoking into guilds, monasteries, and tax systems that changed production scales. Smokehouses were regulated spaces where meat and fish were processed before market distribution. That bureaucratic integration helped stabilize food supplies in towns and supported urban growth across the continent. Monastic communities refined techniques and recorded recipes that passed through generations of cooks and butchers. Those records show iterative optimization of temperature control, wood selection, and brining formulas. What began as household knowledge gradually became organized industry with economic and cultural power. Smoking also shaped trade and exploration by making protein portable for sailors and traders. Salted and smoked fish or meat could survive long sea voyages where fresh food was impossible. Those preserved foods allowed ships to cross oceans, enabled empires to project power, and sustained armies on the move. The logistics of smoked provisions influenced routes, convoy timings, and colonial provisioning strategies. In many ways, smoke and salt were fuel for globalization before steam and refrigeration. Every preserved bite helped rewrite the map of human movement and influence. Technological evolution produced purpose-built smokehouses and kilns that increased control and consistency. Brick and stone smokehouses insulated temperature and trapped smoke more efficiently for predictable results. Artisans learned to route smoke through racks and chimneys to create uniform drying across chambers. These improvements made smoking scalable and allowed communities to standardize flavors and shelf life. Standardization supported marketplaces and regional identities around particular smoked specialties. That architecture of smoke remains visible in old brick smokehouses dotting rural landscapes. The industrial era introduced mechanized smokers and chemical substitutes that changed the relationship to smoke. Liquid smoke and smoke condensates allowed manufacturers to mimic smoky flavor without long durations or fire. Mechanized kilns could churn out smoked hams and bacons at scale for urban populations demanding affordable protein. Those industrial methods traded time and terroir for consistency and speed in global food systems, while accessible factory smoking often lost subtlety and local character found in artisanal methods. The trade-offs of scale versus craft have defined modern debates about authenticity in smoked foods. Traditional smoking and modern methods create markedly different sensory experiences for discerning eaters. Artisanal smoked meats often carry layers of smoke, age, and localized terroir that industrial products rarely replicate. Subtle notes from apple wood or beech, long cold smoke, and careful brine balance give artisanal meats a narrative in every bite. Modern techniques excel at safety, affordability, and predictability that feed millions daily. Artisans counterbalance that efficiency with time, patience, and knowledge that resurrect nuance lost to industrialization. The tension between both approaches is a living debate about what food should mean in modern society. Many of the smoked foods we enjoy today are direct descendants of preservation needs. Bacon, ham, and sausages began as ways to keep pork edible through winter and travel. Over generations, artisans refined curing salts, spices, and smoking schedules to maximize both preservation and pleasure. Smoked salmon and smoked cheeses represent similar evolutionary paths from necessity to luxury shelves. Once refrigeration reduced the need for smoke for survival, smoking became a flavor technique that chefs and home cooks recontextualized. That shift transformed smoking into an act of creativity rather than only survival. Smoking lives at the intersection of chemistry and ritual, creating identity through taste and ceremony. Community smoke days often coincide with harvests and communal gatherings where knowledge is shared and reputations forged. Those rituals codify recipes and wood choices into family and regional identities passed down across generations. Even in urban contexts, barbecue competitions and smoke festivals recreate that communal learning and identity formation in contemporary forms. People gather to taste lineage and technique and to argue about which bark or rub is truest to tradition. Those rituals are cultural glue anchored to flame and flavor. On a chemical level, smoking creates flavor through Maillard reactions and smoke compound deposition working together. Surface caramelization and the reaction of amino acids with sugars form the savory crust, or bark, prized by pitmasters. Meanwhile, volatile phenols and carbonyls from smoke adhere to surface fats and proteins, forming aromatic complexity. Fat plays a crucial role by absorbing and carrying smoky molecules deeper into muscle fibers. That interaction between smoke, heat, and fat explains why certain cuts and preparations respond so dramatically to smoking. Understanding those interactions turns smoking into a disciplined craft rather than guesswork. Wood selection matters because different species yield distinct phenolic fingerprints and sugars. Fruit woods such as apple and cherry offer sweet, gentle smoke ideal for poultry and pork. Stronger woods like hickory and mesquite impart bold, earthy notes better suited to beef and game. Even the age and moisture content of the wood changes the smoke chemistry and intensity. Seasoned hardwood produces cleaner, more aromatic smoke, while damp wood can make acrid flavors and soot. Master smokers develop intimate knowledge of their wood pile as a sommelier knows vineyard differences. Temperature control separates preservation smoking from culinary smoking in practice and purpose. Cold smoking typically ranges below 90 degrees Fahrenheit and focuses on drying and flavor without cooking. Hot smoking uses higher temperatures to both cook and infuse meat, often finishing at safe internal temperatures for immediate consumption. Both techniques require discipline, timing, and equipment suited to the goal of the cook or preserver. A single mistake in temperature can spoil a batch or introduce health risks. That control marks the evolution from improvised hearths to precise culinary art. Safety conversations about smoked meats are as old as smoking itself and remain relevant today. Some smoke compounds can form polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons and nitrosamines under certain conditions that are linked to health concerns. Modern regulation, improved equipment, and informed techniques mitigate those risks while preserving flavor and shelf life. Responsible smoking balances preservation benefits with health considerations by managing temperature, wood choice, and curing chemistry. Educated artisans minimize harmful compounds through controlled burns and proper curing practices. That balance allows the craft to continue while honoring public health. Curing and brining remain foundational steps before smoking to control microbial life and flavor balance. Salt draws moisture out of meat and inhibits bacterial growth, while sugar and spices modulate taste and browning. Wet brines and dry cures each create different textures and seasoning depth that interact with smoke uniquely. Timing matters because undercuring leaves meat vulnerable, and overcuring can create brittle textures and excessive salt. Skilled practitioners tailor brine concentration and cure times to cut size, fat content, and desired final product. Those decisions are the invisible logic behind every great smoked product. Smoking equipment evolved from open pits to highly engineered devices designed for control and flavor nuance. Offset smokers, vertical water smokers, and modern pellet smokers provide distinct heat profiles and smoke generation mechanisms. Each design shapes the way smoke circulates and interacts with meat, and therefore the final sensory outcome. Traditional pits and earth ovens still offer unique char and depth that machines sometimes can't replicate. Many craftsmen combine old and new equipment to achieve both reliability and soulful character. Equipment choice is therefore a statement about priority, speed, scale, or story. A modern artisan revival has brought smoking practices back into the culinary mainstream with renewed interest. Chefs and independent smokehouses are reconstructing long-forgotten cures, experimenting with local woods, and publishing technique-driven recipes. That renaissance values time, provenance, and the narrative embedded in a smoked slice of meat. This revival also connects consumers back to seasonality and place by emphasizing local wood and livestock sourcing. Artisans treat smoking as cultural heritage worth conserving and evolving. Their work reframes smoking as both heritage craft and contemporary innovation. The story of brisket illustrates how smoking transformed from necessity into culinary obsession in modern culture. Brisket was once a humble cut often used because it fed many people economically. Pitmasters used low and slow smoke to break down collagen and develop a bark that turned necessity into a celebrated delicacy. Today, brisket is a global symbol for barbecue culture and regional identity, commanding long wait times and fierce competition. Its resurrection demonstrates how time-based techniques can elevate overlooked ingredients into prized culinary treasures. The brisket renaissance teaches us about the power of patience and craft in food. Over the 20th century, refrigeration reduced the survival need for smoke and recast smoking as culinary ornamentation. With cold storage, smoking moved from daily necessity to choice and cultural expression. This technological shift liberated flavor experimentation while also diminishing centuries of local preservation knowledge. As a consequence, smoke became a way to assert taste identities in restaurants and homes rather than just a survival tool. That historical pivot altered how societies value time. Consuming food processes. Revaluing those processes now reconnects consumers with deeper food histories and skills. Globalization and culinary fusion have stretched smoking into unexpected domains of flavor experimentation. Chefs now smoke chocolate, cocktails, salt, and vegetables to borrow smoke's depth for surprising pairings. These hybrid applications show smoke's adaptability beyond meat and signal a creative reimagining of ancient practices. Such experiments also raise questions about authenticity and respect for tradition when flavor becomes playful and transient. Fusion can enrich culinary vocabulary or dilute meaningful techniques depending on intent and execution. The best experiments honor lineage while asking new questions of tradition. Sustainability is becoming central to conversations about large-scale smoking and wood sourcing practices. Demand for specialty woods can pressure local forests and create ecological consequences if poorly managed. Responsible smokers advocate for reclaimed wood, managed forestry, and efficient combustion to reduce environmental impact. Some smokehouses use wood waste from other industries or favor fast-growing fruitwoods with minimal ecological footprint. Transparent sourcing and thoughtful choices allow flavor traditions to persist without sacrificing ecosystems. That ethical layer adds new meaning to every responsibly smoked product sold in modern markets. Technologies like liquid smoke, smoke condensates, and flavor extraction change how smoke can be delivered to food. Liquid smoke captures volatile compounds in a condensed form and provides a consistent smoky flavor without fire or long processing time. These innovations help producers meet demand, but often lack the layered depth of traditional long smoke. The future may also include precise aroma engineering and controlled particle aerosols that recreate smoke molecules with fewer byproducts. Such developments could reconcile safety, sustainability, and flavor complexity in new ways. They present a tension between replicating tradition and inventing wholly new sensory possibilities. Learning to smoke meat properly requires patience, good judgment, and an appetite for experimentation. Beginners must learn to read smoke color, control airflow, and understand how different woods translate into flavor. Those tactile skills are acquired slowly and often through mentorship or repeated trial and error. Recipes can guide technique but cannot replace sensory feedback and adaptive corrections during a smoke. The craft rewards curiosity and humility because the fire always has the final say. That relationship between human intention and elemental force is central to smoking's durable appeal. There is a timeless paradox in smoking because it both conceals and reveals history in food. A smoked slice carries the fingerprints of wood, weather, animal diet, and human choices layered into a single taste. Eating smoked meat is therefore an act of connecting to a lineage of survival, craft, and cultural negotiation, recognizing that lineage gives food a socio-historical richness often missing from mass-produced items. The flavor becomes a mnemonic device that helps remember landscapes and practices now threatened by convenience. That experiential memory is a powerful reason to preserve smoking traditions beyond nostalgia. A modern smoked food renaissance also raises questions about access and equity in culinary heritage. Artisanal smoked products often carry price premiums that can exclude many consumers. Meanwhile, mass-produced smoked foods prioritize affordability while sometimes erasing cultural context and local knowledge. Addressing this requires creative solutions that spread skills and lower barriers to practice without commodifying culture. Community smokehouses, educational programs, and cooperative ventures can democratize access to smoking skills. Those models keep the craft vibrant and socially inclusive while maintaining authenticity. Taste evolution illustrates how palates shift when survival needs change and cuisine becomes art. As refrigeration removed urgency, chefs and home cooks regain time to experiment and elevate smoking into skilled gastronomy. That patience allowed smoking to be studied, refined, and reimagined with a craftsman's precision. The modern palate often values nuance, balance, and provenance more than sheer intensity of smoke. This evolution highlights how technological progress can free human creativity to rediscover and transform old practices. The best smoke dishes thus combine ancestral wisdom with contemporary taste sensibilities. What then is lost when a technique becomes routine and mechanized without attention to origin? The answer lies in the disappearance of time and local specificity that gives smoke its soul. When shortcuts dominate, the flavor becomes generic and the cultural memory vaporizes into uniform products. Preserving the art of smoking therefore means preserving stories, woods, and human practices as much as preserving meat itself. That preservation requires consumers, artisans, and policymakers to value patience and place. The consequence is a richer food landscape where history and taste cohere. Across the globe, smoked food continues to adapt and surprise in restaurants and home kitchens alike. You can find smoked avocados, smoked honey, and smoked butter reinventing ingredient palettes in subtle ways. Those innovations prove smoke is less a static tradition than a living language of taste that keeps expanding. Yet every new application echoes an ancient impulse to change rawness into edible safety and memorable flavor. Understanding that ancestry deepens appreciation for novel dishes and grounds culinary experimentation in continuity, the creative possibilities remain vast as cooks keep tracing smoke's long arc. If you ever taste an exceptional smoked bite, consider the chain of choices that made it possible. Someone selected specific wood from a particular forest, prepared a cure to match the cut, and tended a fire for hours of patient transformation. That human attention is the real ingredient behind any great smoked product beyond smoke itself. Acknowledging this transforms consumption into an act of historical participation and ethical choice. Buying from local smokehouses or learning to smoke your own meat connects you to a craft that predates modern convenience. In that sense, every smoked mouthful is a small act of cultural stewardship. The lost art of smoking is not entirely lost, but it is fragile and worth protecting. Recording techniques, supporting small producers, and teaching younger cooks will help keep knowledge from disappearing. Those efforts ensure smoke remains a medium of preservation, identity, and pleasure for future generations. Smoked foods remind us that technology and taste co-evolve, and that simple elements like wood and fire can carry profound cultural meaning. Protecting this craft is about sustaining biodiversity, culinary diversity, and communal memory. It is an effort worth undertaking if flavor and history matter to us. There is a philosophical twist hidden inside every smoky aroma we cherish in the present. Smoke is the tangible residue of time because it records hours and decisions in a single sensory signature. Eating smoked meat is therefore an act of tasting time itself, a bridge between past necessity and present desire. When you slow down to savor a smoked bite, you participate in a long human practice of shaping nature into culture through deliberate care. That connection can transform everyday meals into rituals of remembrance and responsibility. The smoky trace becomes a teacher about patience, place, and the human capacity to make meaning from fire. So, what should you do now with this new perspective on smoked meat and history? Consider learning one traditional method and trying it at home to appreciate the craft personally. Seek out local artisans and ask them about their woods, brines, and seasonal practices to support living traditions. If you are inspired, experiment patiently and document your process so the next generation can learn from your successes and failures. Food practices survive when they are shared, honored, and iterated upon. In that way, smoking remains a communal technology of care and creativity. If this exploration of smoke, preservation, and taste gave you a new way of seeing food, then you have already joined the conversation. Smoking is more than technique. It is a living archive of survival strategies, cultural expression, and chemical ingenuity. By tasting thoughtfully and supporting thoughtful producers, you help keep that archive alive. Thank you for spending time with this smoky history and culinary science today. The ember of curiosity keeps the craft burning. If you enjoyed this perspective and want more stories about technology, culture, and food, hit subscribe and share this video with someone who loves flavor and history. Until the next story, keep tasting slowly and asking why.